Díomh tá fáilte roimh go léir isteach. Is mi sé Teresa agus bí mé gobar an seo sa leabharlann. Agus bí áthas an dain orm nuair a eicem na leabhar nua i Gaeilge teacht isteach an seo. Agus seo leabhar nua a tháinig isteach le déanaí. An teidil atá ná Geansaí Otto. Agus is í Sadhbh Devlin a scríomh an leabhar seo, agus is í Róisín Hahessy a bhaisigí. So, is scéal bra siimplí an scéal seo, agus tá an Gaeilge éasca go leor ann. The Irish is easy enough in this story. Ach is scéal iontaich é. It's a beautiful story. Agus in áiríre raunig mé é mar tá teachtracht antáchtach taobh hiarde. There's a very important message behind this little story. Agus an teachtracht atá taobh hiarde ná nuair a bhíonn daoine cneasta cineálta leat, tá sé antáchtach measa bheith agat an gcineáltas sin. That when people are very kind to you, it's very important that you appreciate that kindness. So cad tá sé scéal seo? Well, tá Otto agus a bhamó. There's the little lad Otto and his grandmother. And is duine cneasta cineálta í a bhamó. His granny is a very kind, generous person. Agus bíonn si ag cnitáil I gcónaí. Agus bíonn si ag cnitáil Geansaí de Otto. She's always knitting jumpers for Otto. Ach tá fadhb ann. There's a big problem in that ní haithníonn na Geansaí seo le Otto corbe. Otto doesn't like these jumpers. Agus tá fonn é sin a rá do bhamó. And he's quite determined to let his grandmother know this. So, cad a tharla? Well, tosóimid an scéal. So, bhí beartáin cnapánach tagtha sa phost. Céir de tá cnitáilta ag bhamó an istom sa Otto. So Otto had received this little present in the post, and he knows that it's another jumper from his grandmother. And he says, gosh, what has she knit for me now? Geansaí grána eile a bhí ann. Níor haithin Geansaí bith a chinnetáil bhamó le Otto. Another ugly jumper that was in this little present. And Otto didn't like these jumpers at all. Agus chinnetáil si aláin dó. She knitted a lot of these jumpers for him. Agus féach na Geansathe go léir. Agus na dachanna éagsúla. Ach, bhí fadhb ann. Agus cad é an fadhb sin? What was that problem? Well, an fadhb ná bhí stíl ag Otto. Otto had style. For ba léir leis, nach raibh túram ag bhamó faoi thuairsaí stíle. And unfortunately, it was clear to him that bhamó didn't have a clue when it came to the question of style. Dúirt Daddy le Otto go raibh na Geansathe déanta le grá ag bhamó. Ach, le fírinne. Thig Otto go raibh si déanta le holann ú fásach, scríbach, scrábach. Now, Daddy tried to explain to Otto that the jumpers were made with love by his granny. But to tell the truth, Otto understood that they were made with this terrible scratchy wool. Geansaí, 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 sa Otto leis féin. Caig mé stop a chur le mamó agus an click-clack, click-clack, click-clack den cinetáil sin a bhín siúlacha gan stad. All these jumpers, said Otto to himself. I'll have to put an end to mamó and all the knitting she does without stop. So, Vertig sé gléach a chur bhamó. He makes a decision to ring his grandmother. A bhamó, sa Otto go dingvalte. Tá ábhar táchtach le plé gom leat. I've something very important to discuss with you. Otto, a stórín sa mamó go bín. Nach tusa tá cineálta agus gléach a chuir de chean bhamó. Aren't you the kind little lad to call your granny? Nuair a chúla Otto glór gráv bhamó, ní éiteach sé bheith díon irthaí. Well, tá mé gléach, tuisc. Well, go bhfuil mé contact chuairt a bhamó sé, an istíreach. So Otto backs down a bit and he tells his granny that he's calling her because he's decided to visit her straight away. Nuair eicigh sí an Geansaí neamh-aiseanta seo orm. Tuigigh mamó lárach nach dagan sé le mar stíl farsanta sa Otto. An sin, stoppigh sí den cinetáil. So when Granny, he believes that when Granny sees this terrible, unfashionable jumper on him, that she'll realise that it doesn't agree with his personal style at all. And then she'll stop knitting. So this is what he believes. So off he goes. Vi trus fada river go teach mamó. So he had a long journey to his granny's house. Tá súlagam nach bheicigh aon duine mé agus an rud seo orm sé leis féin. So he's hoping that nobody will see him with this terrible jumper on him. Bhí mamó bís go raibh Otto ag teacht cuairt. Is lá fuair sí le féin. Tá súlagam go mbeidh sé teolaí go leor an tros. So there is Granny, agus tá she bís go raibh Otto ag teacht. She's so delighted that Otto is coming to visit her. So feach, tá go leor rud olbhaithe, tá caca millis agus brioscí agus té agus gachsáis rud olbhaithe de Otto. Lá anna uair a bhí ann, hiúil Otto feadh píos a fada. Tar éis tamil, galach sé sos. Níl an Geansaí cóthú fásach sin fad sé leis féin. Rinne mamó go speisialta domsa é. Geansaí das teolaí de stórín Otto. Sinna deirsi an tam go léir. Bíonn si I gcónaí ag smaoinemh orm. So there is Otto out in the cold, and he decides to take a little break, and he sits down on this piece of wood and he says to himself, well, you know, this jumper isn't so bad after all, because it's keeping him nice and warm on this cold day. And he thinks of his granny and he says, she's so good, you know, that she's always thinking of me. Táim cinnte go bhfuil si ag smaoinemh orm inis díreach fiú, bardam brostú, thosaigh sé ag siúl a ríis. Agus a bhfuil si bhnána eáil caite ag tarlú an seo sa fictúr. Are you able to see what's happening here in the picture? Tá sná ón Geansaí, gramathe den aimid. There's a little piece of the thread from the jumper stuck on the wood. So de réir mar a héan Otto aig, well, beg an Geansaí ag titmas a céile. So as Otto goes on, the little jumper will be unravelling because he has left this trail of wool behind him. So, bhí mamó ag éirí búra. Ní raibh Otto tagatha fós, agus bhí sneachta aníos ann. So Granny was getting a little bit worried because Otto hadn't arrived and it was starting to snow. Bhí sé ag plúchas sneachta agus bhí Otto preachta leis an bhuacht. Má Geansaí álan teolaí a bheadh sé. Níl fágatha ach sná, cad a hála dó. Lean sé an sná, siar an bóthar a rís, hiúil sé agus hiúil sé. So by this stage it was snowing very heavily and his jumper had completely unravelled. An sin stop sé, déist sé, chúla sé fuam. Fuam a bhí cliste cheana aige. Click-clack, 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 click-clack. So he stopped and he heard the sound which he knew very well, the click-clack, click-clack, click-clack of Granny's knitting needles. Agus an sin, cé bhí ann, ach, mamó. Otto a stórín sa mamó, nach mé atá sásta tú a ag-áil. Ó bhamó tá fíor-bhrón orm sa Otto, bhil mé an Geansaí álan teolaí a rinne tú dom. So Granny was delighted to see Otto and Otto was more than delighted to see Granny. And then he says, "Oh Granny, I'm so sorry. I have destroyed the beautiful jumper that you knit for me." And there he is in the cold and in the snow and all his jumper has completely unravelled and he's just left in a little jersey. And mamó says, "Oh, it's come off sin sa mamó. Nuair a tháinig mé do a lorg, chunnach mé sná álan ulla sa sneachta. Agus cnitáil tú Geansaí nua dom. Bhuaise níor cnitáil. Ach tá sé chur sneachta a bhamó. Tá is agam a stórín, sin é an fá gur. So, Granny tells him that she saw this piece of wool in the snow and she picked it up and she started knitting something for Otto, something new for him. And he says, "Oh, is it a jumper?" And she says, "Well, no." Agus catáce, what does she have? Cinnetáil mé cóta dit, agus hatta, agus scarf, agus mitóga. Bhí an cóta go thomláin neamh aisinta. Ní raibh stíl dá laid ag buint leis an hatta. Bhí an scarf grána amach, agus madidir leis na mitóga. So Granny is here and she has knit him a coat and a hat and a scarf and mittens. But the thing was, the coat was completely unfashionable. There wasn't any style whatsoever associated with the hat. And the scarf was completely ugly. And as to speak of the mittens, well, mar sin féin, hig Otto rud éigen nua anis. Faoin na héadaí a bhí déanta ag mamó dó, le hollan fásach scríbach scrábach. But the thing was that now Otto had a new understanding about the clothes that his granny had knit for him with this awful wool. Le fiorna, bhí siad déanta le grá. To tell the truth, they were made with love. Agus bíonn an grá I gcónaí I bheisean. And love is always in fashion. So sin dera an scéal, sin é an teachtracht táchtach taobh hir den scéal. When people are kind and generous to you, it's very important to appreciate that kindness. Nuair a bhíonn daoine Cneasta, Scéalta leat, tá sé antáchtach meas a bheith agat ar an gcineáltas sin. So sin é